Jujutsu Kaisen spin-off just confirmed the return of an absolute monster and the death of a main character. The color page of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo Chapter 7, titled The Robbed, features a solemn image of Yuka with Cross behind her. Things began a ways away from the elementary school. The elderly curse user was trying to get away and prepared himself for a long game of hide and seek. But it didn't take long for a figure to find and tell him not to move. The old man stuck out his tongue with a defiant smile. He lowered his stance and mocked the sorcerer. Usami finally began to remove his glove while preparing to repeat himself. While covering his mouth and staring daggers at his target, Usami told him again not to move. The old man's body jerked. He recognized the cursed seal with snake eyes and fangs. This was a case of cursed speech, so presumably Usami is a member of the Inumaki clan. Usami used his other hand, which still had a glove on it, to punch the old-timer's jaw. Then he kicked him right in the face. Without missing a beat, he told Mino to handle the unconscious man's detainment. And now that we know the situation with one of his hands, I wonder what's up with the other one. Meanwhile, Cross was holding a barely conscious Tsurugi and demanding an explanation for his previous statement. Tsurugi was still sore over their first encounter and reminded the Samurian that he was told not to talk to him. Cross wasn't interested in his banter and only wanted to know why he said the word neighbors. Tsurugi admitted that Maru said it's a friend who understands why the things that matter to you are important. That made Cross grumble about his brother's talkative nature. But with that in mind, Cross questioned the plausibility of such an arrangement, especially given Japan's history. He mocked the country for happily following a script that was given to them by a superpower since the end of the war. So to Cross, being understood by them was impossible. Here, Cross is talking about Japan's relationship with the United States after World War II. He claimed that the people of Japan don't always have to think about protecting their own lives, that humans have everything they need to be human from the moment they're born. The alien assumed that as refugees, his people are looked down on for being dangerous, dirty, and poor. He continued to say that things have only gotten worse thanks to the Kyoto Paranormal Security Treaty granting more power to the Jujutsu community. Tsurugi wasn't even awake and Cross just kept going. He claimed that even if the humans wanted to be neighbors, the Samurians would refuse. Sometime later, Usami entered the scene while Tsurugi received medical attention. Usami and Cross acknowledged one another's presence. Without ever facing the man, Cross expressed his intention of taking a special envoy of a brother back to their mothership for treatment. Usami didn't want the Samurians to see one of their own with injuries, so he offered to have Maru tended to along with the others, at least if he didn't need treatment that only the Samurians are capable of. So even in his suggestions, Usami is fishing for any pieces of information that he can get on the aliens. However, Cross simply refused. Usami had to wonder if Cross expects them to try and collect biological information on their species through his injured brother, which I wouldn't put past them. Afterwards, Cross stood beside his brother. All three of his eyes were looking down. He removed the bandage from Maru's forehead along with his hairband. He would be using them in his brother's place. And from there, we have the chilling return of Mahito. The special grade curse was upset and claimed that it's not him after all. So after all these years, Mahito has yet to reincarnate and is apparently searching for someone. And I'd imagine that that someone has to be our boy Yuji. The possibility of these two running the Fade after 68 years is pretty hype. Now, in all likelihood, Yuji is super old. But considering the fact that he was only at the very beginning of his sorcery journey with the main series, and how incredibly strong he became regardless, I doubt he'd be weak in old age. And lest we forget, Yuji promised to kill Mahito again if he reincarnates as a curse, and I believe him. Tsurugi woke up with a jolt. Apparently, he was the one who saw Mahito. Now, if the curse is lurking in the space between life and death, then maybe it's thanks to this near-death experience from Tsurugi that he was able to see him. Whatever the case, this is a great tease when it comes to the likelihood of Yuji still being alive. Cross was pretending to be Maru and acted like he was happy to see his friend was alright. But instead of answering, Tsurugi was more concerned about his sister's condition. Cross Maru let him know that Yuka was still getting checked out, but seemed to be just fine. Cross Maru brought up the fact that Tsurugi encountered Cross. Tsurugi confirmed as much and asked if Maru's brother is always like that. Cross Maru wondered what he meant. Tsurugi wanted to know if Cross is always so pissed off. Cross Maru hesitated while claiming that he's not. Either way, Tsurugi could understand why he'd be that way. With sincerity shining in his eyes, Tsurugi apologized to Maru for his previous accusations. He admitted to being close-minded and was sure that the Samurians have their own reasons for acting the way that they do. Cross Maru paused at that. Tsurugi brought up the fact that Maru used his curse technique and ended up getting hurt, so he wanted to know if his friend had been punished. Cross Maru said that he hadn't just yet. And hearing that, Tsurugi couldn't help himself from feeling a bit anxious about it. That's when Yuka entered the room while calling Maru the MVP of their mission. Cross Maru was cheerful towards her entrance. She heard how amazing he was, but didn't see any of it since she was knocked out. But since she was away from Tsurugi, I wonder how much was accurately conveyed. Tsurugi chimed in that their friend could easily pass for a grade 1 sorcerer. Yuka was impressed and teased him for showing off. Although, to be fair, even Tsurugi didn't see the full extent of Maru's capabilities. From there, Yuka questioned what they do about their plans for the day. Tsurugi let her know that he wasn't having any trouble moving. Although, he was curious about Yuka's condition. After all, he was surprised to see her run out of stamina so quickly. Yuka told him that she's just fine and was simply off her game. Hearing that, Tsurugi decided that there wouldn't be any harm in them going today. Cross Maru asked where they'd be going, much to Yuka's surprise. She reminded Maru that they were headed to a place he's been begging them to take him, an amusement park. They went on various rides with Mino in tow. Sadly, Cross's experience was the total opposite of what we could expect from Maru. While munching on some popcorn, Cross cursed his brother for not including this on his schedule. At the same time, the Okkotsu siblings were complaining about the slow pace of the roller coaster. And according to Mino, someone was bound to die if they tried to keep up with the two of them, which might just be a bit of foreshadowing. After that, Cross noticed a balloon that was floating away from a child. He caught the string and extended it to a distracted little boy. The kid turned to him and asked where his mommy was. The three sorcerers suddenly had a situation on their hands. And with how many little kids keep showing up in these few chapters, I guess Japan must have found a way to curb its declining birth rate in the last 68 years. To deal with this cliche, the group split up. Yuka and Cross Maru would stay with the kid. And since Tsurugi's face was scary, he'd head over to the lost kid desk. And Mino decided to follow him. Yuka stooped down, and with a smile, she assured the boy that his mom would be back soon if they'd just wait for her. Unfortunately, that didn't stop the boy from silently crying. Cross Maru flatly told him not to do so. He saw no point in crying since it wasn't like the child's mother was dead. So he commanded the kid to remain still and silent. Yuka and the boy looked at him with astonished expressions. Then the kid erupted into tears and screams. Yuka couldn't believe how insensitive the alien was being. Cross Maru was really thrown off by all the noise. He opted to distract the kid with some dynamic aerial movements. The little boy was awestruck by the sudden performance. Cross Maru caught his popcorn before a single one could fall. This was immediately met by the applauding cheers of a crowd, but Cross's face remained stoic all the while. In response, Yuka did a backflip. She pointed a challenging finger at the alien and told him not to get cocky since she could do it too. Cross grimaced and wondered what was up with her. It wasn't like this was a competition. Eventually, the little boy's mother showed up. Cross was surprised by what came next. The child thanked him and offered his balloon. Yuka called her brother and let him know that the situation had been cleared up, while Cross read the back of the balloon and questioned the word Halloween. So I guess they're in sync with our current time of year. So it won't be long before we're saying 69 years instead of 68. Nice. Yuka explained that Halloween is a holiday with Christian roots that was originally started by a different religion entirely. Cross Maru asked if Christianity is a religion that Earthlings follow. Yuka replied that it's more like 20 to 30% of the world, so not much has changed on that front in almost 7 decades. She added that the Japanese are a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to religion. Although they tend to follow Buddhism, Confucianism, and Shinto, they've also adopted the more commercial holidays of other religions. Crossmaru then asked if Yuka doesn't have a god she believes in. Yuka admitted that personally she doesn't, but she was curious about Cross's stance. The dispatch officer looked over at her, realizing that his cover was blown. But it's not like he's done a good job of pretending to be Maru since they made it to the amusement park. To Yuka, it was really obvious, although she wasn't so sure if her brother knew or not. In either case, she didn't think Tsurugi would say anything since he wouldn't be able to handle being wrong, as that would mess with his cool image. At the same time, Tsurugi was surprised to learn that Mino doesn't like children. The assistant apparently doesn't know the first thing to say to one. Cross let Yuka know that the Sumerians do have a god. Yuka brought up how in the past, Christianity wasn't allowed in Japan, that to find out who secretly believed in it, the authorities would take tablets with Jesus on them and tell people to step on them. Anyone who refused was deemed a Christian and killed. Yuka then expressed her stance that if she were a Christian back then, she would have just stepped on the tablet and asked God for forgiveness afterwards, followed by a more solemn declaration that once you're dead, it's all over. She added that she can respect that different cultures and religions value certain things, but at times, she struggles to really emphasize with how they might feel. Cross considered her words. Then he asked what her stance would be if instead of a tablet, they were expected to trample on a living thing. He wanted to know if she could trample on the tablet if it were alive. That reframed Yuka's outlook, since she never thought about it like that. And now that she could understand that, Cross called Yuka and her brother shallow-minded. He claimed that humans like them had trampled on the Sumerians' way of life without even realizing, sometimes by standing idly by, other times by outright stealing from them. So it seems like the Sumerians have a more extensive history with humanity than we originally thought, which is interesting because the fact that the Japanese possess powers similar to their own was a recent revelation. So maybe this has something to do with humanity's space exploration. It's a bit hard to say just yet. Cross clarified that he's not suggesting that being stolen from gives anyone the right to steal from others in turn. However, a victim of robbery was likely to be tempted towards theft themselves, so the takers should be prepared for that. Yuka suddenly realized that the alien might have just declared war on them. Feeling a bit uneasy, she decided to act like she didn't hear that. But considering the timing, she suggested that he follow her somewhere that might change his mind tomorrow. Cross wondered where she wanted him to go with her. She explained that together, they would be going to get a second opinion at another hospital. There, a projection of Yuka's brain was presented, and one spot in particular was illuminated. The doctor explained the situation, all while Cross stood behind her in silence. Afterwards, the two walked alongside a bridge. Yuka honestly couldn't follow everything the doctor was saying. As it turns out, Yuka has an illness that she's never even heard of before. Cross questioned if it's not cancer. He at least knows that cancer is common among Earthlings. Yuka wasn't sure how different a malignant tumor might be from cancer. And to make matters worse, that tumor is in her brain. She figured that her headaches weren't normal, but this was unbelievable. And as if that wasn't harrowing enough, Yuka is expected to only have 6 months left to live. She wryly joked about her life being some sort of low-budget drama. If so, she would have liked for some love interest to rush to her bedside or something like that. That certainly was not Cross, so he asked Yuka why she brought him along. Yuka confessed that she hates going alone, but doesn't want to be pitied. Callously, Cross expressed that even if Yuka has half a year to live, her heart died the moment she learned her fate. That no matter what she does, her heart will never be moved like it was before. The things that made her smile won't matter anymore. The thought of death would hang over her every remaining moment. And from there, he expects her to cast the precious time she has left into a cesspool of hatred and loathing, an all-consuming resentment of her fate and its comparison to that of others. Yuka asked Cross if he was speaking from experience. He didn't hesitate to confirm this and claimed that they both had their future stolen from them. To that, she asked Cross what he would do. Yuka wanted to know if Cross would steal even more from those who have already been stolen from. And that question of hers made that anger he spoke of rise to the surface. Cross rejected her comparison since the fate of his people was caused by a man-made disaster, and not some illness or accident. Yuka didn't mind the distinction, but reminded Cross that he was the one who insinuated that they were the same. Looking up, Yuka pointed out that although Cross lost his home, he wouldn't die, while her death was a certainty. And as we now know, she doesn't even have a faith that would promise her salvation. Cross mocked her for believing that he'd changed his mind just because she won the pissing contest of bad luck. But that wasn't what Yuka meant at all. Instead, she didn't understand why he was jumping to such conclusions. Yuka can't change her situation, but given enough time, Cross can change his. She added that it's okay to be upset about how unfair things are, or not forget it. Yuka wants to know what happened to Cross and his people. She also stressed the fact that they are not enemies. Cross wasn't interested in her idealistic outlook. He refused to accept the righteous arguments of someone standing safely on the opposite shore. Although now, he silently had to correct himself since that's not exactly the case for Yuka anymore. He continued to rant about their proposition of so-called coexistence. Cross was sure that this really meant living on Earth without causing any trouble. Outraged, he asked how long they would need to keep their behavior in check for the sake of the Earthlings. That if they're expected to spend years or even decades with their heads bowed to the ones responsible for their plight, that he would rather steal. To that, Yuka asked how long he would steal for. Cross staggered, unsure how to answer. Yuka let him know that hating and stealing from people is easy, and that's why it becomes an endless cycle. So, with only a step between them and the presence of a bridge, Yuka suggested that the two of them put an end to all of that. Yeah, this art from Yuji is just so complimentary, I love it, it is just beautiful. And this chapter was just overall insane. I mean, I know we were looking forward to more focus on Yuta, but I don't think brain cancer is what any of us had in mind. But with that being the case, Yuka's dream of reclaiming the ring and being like her grandfather Yuta now has a time limit. Her and her brother will need to become very strong in a very short amount of time. The Simurians and Deborah aside, if Mahito comes back, it'll be hard for this current generation of weaker sorcerers to deal with him. But again, if Mahito is between life and death, then maybe being on the constant precipice of death will bring Yuka closer to him. There's also the fact that cursed energy is deeply associated with a person's brain. And technically, I suppose Mahito might actually be able to cure her situation. Now, Maki told Tsurugi that like her, he is someone who grows stronger from loss. And this is coming from someone who also became stronger after losing a sibling. So Yuka's situation will be harrowing for Tsurugi too. She's likely to keep it a secret, especially since Cross is the only one who knows, but the truth is bound to come out eventually. If her stamina continues to be shot, then there's just no question. Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo is going all in on the political commentary, and it is being done really well. Boruto comparisons abound on account of the whole aliens thing, but at least in this case, the author clearly has something to say. This is not just a cash grab. And I'm sure you guys have plenty to say about all these bombshell reveals. I mean, the fact that the Simurians have a god isn't even the most interesting thing to come out of this chapter. So please, let us keep the conversation going in the comments. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.